Hey there, Beat Academy member, and welcome to this exclusive Beat Academy breakdown video. Now, I've got a single coming out soon, so what better way to celebrate that than to walk through the whole process from inspiration to getting the final product mixed and mastered, which is also featuring a good friend of mine, Graham Cochrane, on vocals and on guitars. And I've also let him mix and master this project as well. I wanted a fresh new perspective sonically, and I thought he'd do a great job. So I'm going to walk you through the whole process. So let's dive right in.
I'm thinking freedom when it's for anyone. I feel the spotlight away from the sun. I know that
Now, I don't necessarily start all my projects the same way. Sometimes I might come across a synth patch that really catches my attention and just noodle around with some riffs and then hit the ground running. Or go through some drum loops or different loops in general and just see what I can piece together, or just by listening to music. So it's never gonna be the same starting point for every song. Sometimes I might just load a drum preset and use some effects processing to, spice up the actual sound of the drums, and then that might take me somewhere that I'd be surprised that it led me to. So, and that was the case for this particular song. So here I have a drum kit with some pre-selected sounds already loaded in it. And this is a drum kit that comes, I think, stock or came with an Ableton Live pack. So there's nothing really special or spectacular about this sound-wise to me personally. And what I did was I went ahead and just put an overdrive distortion immediately right onto the whole drum kit, so it affects all the sounds in the drum kit. Now, that transformed it completely, night and day. So if we go and then put the overdrive on, and I've got the settings pretty heavy. I've got the dry and wet over 64%. So I'm just experimenting and coming up with something that really adds some character and color to it. And I just loaded a compressor right after that to just even bring out some of the punch from the initial transients of all the sounds. So I start with that, and that alone, that is my inspiring beat. So I actually just start putting that down. And as you can see, not doing a lot of heavy quantizing. So I even have got this kick a little loose here, and that's cool. I want this to be really humanistic and not so stiff and robotic. So seeing how the overdrive added some really good beef to the drums, I'm gonna also use a dimension type plugin such as a delay, a nice quick slapback delay, to see what it does to spice up the drums. So here on a return track B, I've got a plugin called Repeater. And this plugin is just doing a 30-second delay, so it's in sync with the project. So the left and right signal are set to 30-second note delays. And I'm just kind of tweaking the feedback. Both the right and the left are set to a different setting. And then I'm actually filtering out some of the low end and some of the high end here, adding just a little bit of color here with this specific plugin. So let's go ahead and crank some of the drums to that delay. Love it, love it. I love the feel and just the vibe it gives to those drums. And then let's go ahead and just do that. Take the overdrive. So that is a great framework for me to now work in and just get inspired. So once I've gotten this down, I'm already thinking of, like, pictures are coming to my mind. I'm visualizing like just what kind of attitude I'm getting from this kind of drum, from this drum pattern, this drum sound, and just the overall vibe that it's giving me. So I'm definitely thinking, "We Will Rock You" type thing from Queen, but definitely got this like. Definitely gonna head to like a rock type of vibe, an anthem type vibe, and I like doing those. So let's just keep moving in that direction. Now, usually with the big rock anthem drums, the Imagine Dragons type drums and things like that, there's a lot of layering going on. So I'm going to layer the first drum kit that we've done with another drum kit. A drum kit filled with sounds that already have that big space imprinted on them. So these are sounds like warehouse kick drums, kick drums played in a huge warehouse and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and layer that same beat. I'm actually just going to grab the beat from here and just play the same actual rhythm and sequence. And I added this nice little chain vibe there. So let me put the headphones on so we can hear it. It's like this reverse chain. So just put it there so we get a nice little turnaround before this clap here. So here's without it. Now, when you're in a creative state, it's so important that you capture those sparks of inspiration. So I always either have my phone nearby with voice memos ready or a microphone. My microphone's always on. When I mean that, it's just plugged, ready to go, record enabled. And so I had an audio track open, recorded it, just got up there and started humming a bunch of ideas that I heard in my head. And so that was important because now I've captured something in that performance that ended up becoming the foundation of the melody and the overall song, to be honest. So here is just me mumbling around in the microphone. Before you hate, yes, I probably do sound like a dying yak drowning in a tub of molasses, but I can care less because we can disguise that with a little bit of processing. So just a little compression from 1176. And I'm going to put the overdrive, just as I did with the drums, on my voice. So idea, and I'm just going to comb through this, and I think I found a really cool loop around here. And here I'm going to hit the fade button, Ableton Live. So it just secretly puts a fade at the end of the loop, so I don't have any of that popping going on when it loops back over. So let's see what this sounds like with the drums in there. So continuing with the inspiring momentum that I've got going on with the vocal loop and the drums, I'm going to actually use a hardware synth that I have lying around here in my studio, plug that directly into my audio interface, and just jam along and see where that takes us. We got some pretty cool parts in there. Let's go just take a listen and see what we've got. I've got this little intro section that I did to kind of build some anticipation. And then I go to some counter melody stuff here. So it's really cool. And let me just kind of walk through what's going on here. Again, this is just me capturing the vibe, capturing the moment. And that is at the very essence and core of having fun in the creative process, of really just this kind of stuff always reminds me of why I got into making music in the first place. I'm like, wow, I just love doing this. It's really cool. Just naturally kind of flows out there. And if, I don't want you to beat yourself up if you're saying, wow, my stuff isn't naturally flowing out like your stuff, that's okay. What tends to happen, it's like riding a bike or any type of muscle memory. If you go to the gym and you start working out for the very first time, you're sore the very next day because your body was just not used to using those muscles, carrying that weight and lifting what you were lifting or the type of exercise. But when you do it for enough times, you develop muscle memory. Your body knows exactly how to maintain lifting that weight. And then before you know it, you're like, we're used to lifting this already. So take it another step up. And so, don't feel overwhelmed if you're brand new into this whole process and you're like, not even my random ideas are sounding well put like this. That's okay. Just develop the training, get your mind and ear used to how to navigate through certain chords and things like that, and just get used to that process so it just becomes second nature to you down the road. What we have going on is we have the humming loop just consistently pinging and just focusing in on the E flat. And so we're in E flat minor. And remember, I didn't map that out beforehand. That's just because when I hummed it, I found the root note and realized this is going to be an E flat minor. And so the sustaining note that we hear in the beginning is just me holding down that E flat. But then what creates that counter melody to that movement and that vibe is when I go 3 notes down from the scale. So from E flat, D flat to C flat, which would be B. But we can't use B because there already is a B flat in the scale. And if you need help in referencing and understanding what I'm talking about, definitely check out the Music Theory 101 course. But we're going E flat, C, D flat, and C flat. So I'm going 3 notes, not 3 semitones or 3 steps. I'm going 3 notes down for that initial change of counter melody. So the bass is doing some movement there, and then we have this loop just continuously like highlighting the E flat. And so that counter melody really caused some nice tension, and it's just so now we've got the syncopation is what's causing the bass line to be more of a separate part of the arrangement. And I'm just sustaining that note. So it's definitely got that Another One Bites the Dust from Queen. It has that kind of motif and that vibe. So I'm staying there. And this is going to give a lot more breathing room for vocals and melody for the vocal to kind of live in. So then I can start incorporating more elements that work around this skeleton or this shell. And so once I've got that in place, I can just map out the arrangement and I put all the missing pieces together. But this this is the cornerstone of this idea, and we start building upon this. And now we fast forward a couple of weeks, and I say a couple of weeks because it's the process of me laying out an arrangement, adding some more elements around that, and inviting somebody else into the process. I kind of sent this over to a good friend of mine, Graham Cochrane, and had him just write and cut vocals for this, as well as gave him the stems to mix it and add some guitars to this. So this is pre-mix arrangement, but with his vocals in there. And then I'm going to walk you through what I added around where we started from. So we still have the Novation bass station parts and the drum parts, and we're just building around those elements. So here I decided to use that counter melody change as the and I've added some effect processing onto the Novation bass station, such as this over-the-top multi-band compressor preset, and just a little bit of 31% of that. And we're doing some automation with the EQs to differentiate the verse and the bass. So and the chorus, sorry. So for the verse section, the EQ turns on and it gets a little bit warmer. I take a lot of that high-end grit. With the sidechain compressor with the kick. So it gives some ducking and movement going on both in the verses and the chorus. And then I'm layering that Ultranova bass with another bass patch, and this is from the Moto bass. That's just to add some texture to that bass sound as well, and it really comes through in the verses. And I'm adding overdrive onto that bass, about 47% of that, and some sidechain compression. And the sidechain compression here is I'm putting it on a lot of the bass elements so that it has that ducking feel, and it's got like this, just makes your head bob and nod when you hear the beat together with the bass. So if we just solo the kick, snare, and these elements here. So we've got the same kick, snare, the same drums that we started off with, and the same big warehouse drums. What I've done is, the reason why you see two of them is because I went inside the drum kit and I right-clicked on the specific element and I hit extract chains. I did that because I knew that I was going to send this off to be mixed. So I wanted the kicks and snares to be individually stemmed out so Graham would have more freedom when mixing. I've also added another layer of sub bass to that chorus breakdown. And for this, I'm using a wavetable sine wave, just one oscillator set to a sine wave. So any sine wave oscillator would work just fine. And then I'm using the amp simulator after that to add some harmonics to really help the low end sub beef just be more evident and pop out more in the mix. And I'm using an EQ to just take off any of the high end that I'm not really going to be using from the sub. And then side chaining it to get the same principle, that nice bobbing head nod kind of vibe from the sub bass. And those are the three main layers going on for the basses and that low end section. Let me head to the drums and focus in on a couple things. I've added a loop here. And so here we have a loop playing half time, or twice as slow as the original tempo of the loop. And I set the warping to repitch so that it would pitch the sample or the loop down to match the desired tempo. So by default, if I hit the divided by 2 button here, this is what the loop sounds like originally. And what makes it work is this gate plugin here. So the gate is now sidechained to the kick drum. So it's only going to be heard when the kick drum is played. And depending on how low the threshold is, well, how much of that loop will actually be present. So I've got the release up a little bit as well, so that some of the artifacts in that loop linger a little bit. If I had it short, but having it open causes a little bit of those cool artifacts to be present. So it really works well when we're moving in the verses. It's so subtle, but it adds some really cool vibe to it. It's got that nice little, so it's almost as if somebody was marching and they had chains tied to their body. And so as they're marching, it's just rattling in the distance, rattling in the background. So I kind of like that idea. And I like the vibe that gave to the drums. And on top of having that with the bass, it really does, it's very subtle, but it makes a big difference. And so now we have some crashes added throughout the arrangement to just accent transitions and new places here for the verses and in the choruses and things like that. But then we're adding another loop here, and I'm using the arcade plugin from Output. So here's another drum loop. So if I open up Arcade, this is a cool little plugin I've featured before in other projects. But this basically, I kind of use this to now, sew up the seams and add some nice, cool little artifacts and just kind of fill in any gaps or maybe sound transitions and things like that. But I came across this drum loop that was really cool. Just kind of boosting the high end of that and putting that alongside the other drums that we have to give this whole other rhythm. So the drum fill is also from that arcade plugin as well. So that really captures the whole vibe with the drums. We've got it's just really creating that movement and that march and that gallop. So it just feels like we're gradually building, and you can see that's what we're doing with the arrangement. We save that drum break for that chorus section only. And then we have the basses come in. And then I doubled up the bass. So here's the actual novation. We'll do this. So I've actually doubled up the bass here. I went an octave higher. So same audio part. And then I went ahead and just transposed that up 12 semitones. And I took out some of the low end here because I wanted this to be a grungy, fuzz distorted bass up here. So we've got some digital distortion to make it sound down sampled. Compression doing the side chain so you hear the ducking. And then I'm using this free plugin from Audio Damage called Fuzz Plus 3. Really cool, it's free, check it out, you can download it. Nice, cool fuzz distortion. I'll take this with, unplug this. So it doesn't really make the sound too sharp. And it warms it up. And then I'm using a meta flanger. This is from Waves here. And this is just to give some movement going on. So it's not stagnant. And it's just kind of swirling its way through the other elements in the track. And then I've got a utility plugin. And then I'm using this other plugin here, Sugar, by Pure Mix, to bring out some high end there. So it's like a multi-band exciter. I just kind of put it on there because I just got the plugin. I was just messing with it. So I've got that, and I'm layering that with another kind of grungy type of bass here. For this, I'm using Serum. So in Serum, let me just solo this here. We have. Now for this, I just went straight ahead using a preset. I'm using the lead preset called Dub Drill or Dub Brill, however you say it. But I just wanted another grungy element with that. Took out the low end because I'm leaving this for the bass, and just sidechain compressing it. And that was really it. All the effects and everything that you're listening to are embedded in that preset. And then I had this old piano. Now, my train of thought with bringing this piano on board was, I don't know. I didn't really know. I actually, I was using a piano patch to map out where I was going to go for the bridge. I knew I wanted to do some, so just kind of experimenting. And as I did that, I fumbled across a preset using the Una Corda Native Instruments patch. This cool, mysterious sound to it. I really liked it. I go, man, how cool would that be? Maybe I'll have that, play alongside with the bass as well. And I'm adding some over-the-top multi-band compression and then the overdrive on this and some EQ. So I'll take all that off. Hardly any overdrive on it, it's just really subtle. And I'm using a Fab Filter Saturn, which is a multi-band distortion. So you can actually distort by frequency band. This is without it. So all this stuff is just really subtle, just trying to bring out a little bit more of that initial hammer pluck that I hear from the piano. But it was a really cool element to layer with the basses. Now, once I had that in place, halfway through that chorus, we've got this cool little cello vibe happening here. And this is happening halfway throughout the chorus, so it just elevates everything, and it just starts to lift the whole chorus up. So it's just a high string part. Once again, I'm using the arcade here, and I was just looking for just some random sounds, mostly like string or just a pad, something that I can play that's higher up an octave, and this ended up being the sound. A lot of reverb directly onto the pad itself to send it further back in the mix, and doing some drastic sidechain here. So let's go ahead and mute the vocals and listen to all the elements going on in that chorus. So let me focus in on the arrangement. Once I had this basic arrangement put down, I didn't want to fall into the trap of overproducing, adding too many elements, because I knew I wanted to send this over to Graham to write, to put vocals down, and possibly even put some more guitar stuff and anything else he might think could be added on there. So I wanted to basically have the core basic skeleton down. And I don't want to put too many elements, because then that just leaves a little room for him to do his thing. So when you're collaborating with working with other people, always keep that in mind. You want to give some breathing room for others to have their fresh perspective, fresh ears coming into the project. Want to give them some room to do what they do best. I'm not a great guitar player, so I had, like, you know, the one or two grungy synth things would be cool. He can take them out if they're conflicting with the guitars. I put him in there as like more of a placeholder when I send it off to him. But here's something I wanted to highlight from the arrangement. Now what we have here is the verse bass, and then we go straight to that chorus switch. Unlike my other arrangements where I have a verse and then I introduce a pre-chorus, a section that announces the chorus, and then the chorus I might go to a chord change or a different progression. The moment I did that in this vibe, it really took the energy away. So we've got the verse bass line, and then we go straight into the changes, because the energy just, this kind of track just didn't need it. It didn't need me to go to another chords change. So technically it could work, but just this didn't feel right when I did that. So if that's the case, if I'm building upon that, I'm just dynamically building as I go. So the first verse is going to be a little different as I introduce new elements than the second verse. So here's the first verse. Actually, let me go ahead and play you with the vocal, because now you can see the whole perspective of having the vocal live in the verse pocket.
I wanna see what you made of. I need to know you for real. I'll strive with you till the day breaks. I need to know how it feels. I think it's freedom.
Now it's cool, it just felt right going straight into the switch, because his dynamic performance just sets it up really well. And so we've got the verses just being sparse element, very raw. And that's the thing, like this track just has that raw vibe. And so, you know, without having to stack too many harmonies and things, I really wanted to keep that motif, the raw element about it. And my thing was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So heading over to the second verse, we've got the same type of feel, but then I introduce some cool cello parts from the arcade riff. So it just so happens that this arcade preset has some low-end cello bow plucking or picking. So there's a couple cool parts in there, and there you go. So I have that element playing along with the bass as well. Then I've actually recorded some stabs here with my Juno, just to do some call and response sections there. And then, so just that's one or two elements that we get to hear that isn't present in the first verse. I had them there, but I took them away, as you can see, and we have that evident there. And after the second chorus, now we go to a change. Since we're gonna go ahead and, having a chord change changes the energy, I'd rather do that in the bridge than disrupt the linear dynamic building of the verse to the chorus. So here we have, I've got the electric. This is the electric sunburst from Native Instruments, the electric guitar. Let me go ahead and play this. And this is the piano patch just playing the chords for the bridge. Along with the electric and some pads going on in the chorus. And then I have an arpeggiator going off here, and I'm using an old plugin I used to use back in the day. I don't know why. It came to my mind. It's like, hey, I really like the way that arpeggiator plugin sounded like. So this is Rapture made by Cakewalk, and I've got an arpeggiator plugin on there, and I'm filtering it in. It's just there, it's just creeping up in the background. Now the big payoff is here at this chorus. So now I bring everybody on board. We've got a new arpeggiator. I've got the synth pads playing here. And so for that, I'm basically using the Ableton Live analog. I've got two oscillators set to a sawtooth, just playing the chords. So I'm running a reverb directly on it, filtering out in that high end. Compressor here for just more of a consistent dynamic, just really subtle. But then we have the sidechain compression also happening, give that ducking. And then I was using this S1 imager to widen up the sound, so it would really fill up nicely there. And then having the arpeggiator in there that we haven't heard in any of the choruses. So it's at that last chorus, I'm making sure that all the elements are going to be there. Plus, this is still raw, rough vocals without having any guitar work or anything on there. And then throughout the arrangement, we're using these effects to build up anticipation and cause tension as we transition from one section to the next. So these are really good to add some of that nice dynamic and tension building momentum throughout the song. So that's it. And then, so keep in mind, this is the pre-mix. This is like the production, and I really don't have much on the master bus. And the purpose for this is I just have a little bit of compression happening because because I want somebody to mix it and do their thing with it. So usually if I was mixing, I'd spend now the extra time and getting this sonically to where I want. Now it's time for me to stem out each individual track so I can hand this over to Graham for him to add his final vocals, guitars, mix, and master the product. So that was the reason why I broke out the kick and the snare from my drum kit, as well as the big kick and the big claps from the separate drum kit that we started off with. I've got all the tracks broken out the way I need them to be. And so we're gonna head over here in Ableton Live and head to File, Export Audio, and Video. Now, what's important is before I do that, I need to set my markers. What's the beginning of the song and what's the end of the song? So here's the marker here. This is the beginning of the song. And this is, let's go about 2 bars after. That'll be the end of the song. Now I can go to File, go to Export, and instead of render track out of master, this is only going to give me the master output, whatever's going through the master track. So we don't want that. I want all individual tracks. And what this is going to do is it's going to balance every single track that we have in the session, including the return tracks. So anything that I'm running through a delay return or that slapback 30-second delay that we put the drums through, all that stuff is going to go through. You can also pick through here and just select one individual track. Now it's cool that you're able to do this because that saves a lot of time from just hitting the solo button, export, and go to the next one, solo button, export, and so on and so on. So I'm going to hit all individual tracks. I'm going to bounce this at 24-bit, and then it's going to be at WAV file. And when I hit export, I'm simply going to make sure that I change the name from Dope Idea for Graham version 10 premix.wave to maybe just a letter I. The reason why I go with the letter I is because it's going to export I, and then if the track label is kick, it'll be I kick and I snare. If I put it as Dope Idea for Graham session Anaconda whatever, it's going to have that then kick after it. So just make my life easier and just put the letter I for ill, or I would put ill, whatever. You could use any one letter, and then it'll put the name of the track right after that. So very simple. Once you've done that, you'll have all the stems printed out. You can hit export, and it'll bounce each individual stem offline. And then I just zip up that folder, send it over to Graham, and give for him to do his thing. And so you can actually check out the finished product by clicking the link below. And then I'm going to produce another video coming soon of walking through the process of actually distributing that song. How do I get it out to the world to hear? So coming up with some concept art and where to get some really cool concept art, artwork for your projects. And then how do I upload it and release it on all the major streaming platforms, such as Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, things like that. So I hope this video was helpful and looking forward to seeing you on the next one.